There's nothing quite like a home run. It's the most effective thing you can do with a baseball bat, of course, but the home run is also unique in its power to exceed and suspend baseball. It literally stops the game. It punctures the invisible wall between the field of play and the real world. And there's also the potential for emotion, for narrative. A home run that doesn't matter all that much to the outcome of a game or a season might mean a lot from a different perspective. That's what we're here to talk about. Dingers that mattered not so much because of the scoreboard, but because of some other story. This video is brought to you by T-Mobile, the best 5G coverage in the game, home and away on America's largest 5G network. Learn more at T-Mobile.com/MLB. There's a clear place to start. The McGwire-Sosa duel in 1998 is the quintessential example of the home run as a personal mission and a cultural curiosity above and beyond baseball.
It's September 8th, 1998. We're in St. Louis where the visiting Chicago Cubs lead the hometown Cardinals 2-0 in the bottom of the fourth inning. There's plenty of game left, but if you look around at this packed-out crowd on their feet, you would think the Cardinals were headed to the World Series. I don't see a free hot dog promotion or a t-shirt giveaway in sight, so why the hell are these fans so hyped? It's only one way to find out. We gotta rewind. This episode of Rewinder is presented by T-Mobile, America's largest 5G network. These fans in Busch Stadium have a chance to witness history. While it looks like they're applauding this beefy red-haired dude for his impressively large arms, they're waiting to see what he can do with those muscles. With this at bat, Mark McGwire could become the new leader for most home runs in a single season. It's a record that hasn't been broken in nearly 4 decades, but if anyone can do it, Mark's the guy. 61 homers is a magic number that McGwire's chasing, set by Roger Maris in the early 60s. Over the years, a few players came within reach of toppling Maris, but McGwire's been the most consistent. During his rookie year in '87, Big Mac smashed 49 dingers with the Oakland Athletics and continued to display his superb hitting power during his time in the Bay. McGwire's slugging prowess, alongside his just as shredded teammate Jose Canseco, earned the two the nickname the Bash Brothers. But after several postseason shortcomings and a deteriorated relationship with his brother by bashing, McGwire soured on the A's entering the '97 season. Oakland traded him in July, and despite a season of uncertainty, McGwire still managed to mash 58 homers. Besides McGwire, MLB began to experience a sudden spike in elite home run hitters, leading journalists to believe Maris's record would be cooked sooner rather than later. McGwire was the poster boy to do damage. Before the '98 season, he graced the cover of Sports Illustrated's March issue with the headline, "Get Ready for a Slugfest," where the publication gave the slugger 4-1 odds to make history. Which wasn't surprising. The dude excelled at crushing pitches to the upper decks of stadiums to the point where I wouldn't be surprised if he'd been created in a lab. Now, numerous people did believe that lab work came with steroid injections. Throughout his career, McGwire suffered numerous injuries that spectators attributed to his gigantic frame. Big Mac had haters, but insisted that a guy could have biceps the size of someone's head, all by simply putting in hard work. Despite all that hard work he put in, McGwire had often found himself on the DL. Because of that, SI gave King Griffey Jr. slightly better odds to surpass Maris. Either way, they expected dingers. Come season time in April, McGwire and Griffey both dropped bombs at a rapid pace and found themselves tied at 15 home runs in mid-May. Although by Memorial Day, not only did Big Mac set himself apart from the kid, he was on track to obliterate the record. Journalists constantly wanted updates on McGwire's thoughts as he got closer to Maris, but no matter how much they pressed, he didn't seem interested. It's not that he wasn't confident. McGwire didn't feel comfortable comparing himself to baseball legends with so much time left in the season. The pressure and attention of the chase clearly began to weigh on him. He became a traveling sideshow where thousands of fans flocked to stadiums early just to see him in batting practice. Hell, even opposing managers stopped what they were doing to watch. During a June road game, McGwire compared people swarming his BP to feeling like a caged animal. For being so great at something that brought excitement to others, Mark didn't seem to find much joy in the chase. But that didn't mean he stopped demolishing pitches. McGwire still leads the league in homers, and with this at bat, he could make history. If Big Mac isn't thrilled about the chance to put his name in the record books, this dude in right field would be more than happy to take his place. Okay, I know in 1998 there is room for advancement in picture quality, but I'm positive that's not Ken Griffey Jr. Right fielder for the Cubs. Right fielder for the Cubs. Ah, that's Sammy Sosa. But what does he have to do with any of this? In terms of people in the conversation to break Maris's record entering the 98 season, Sosa was an afterthought. That is, when he was even thought of at all. Sorry, Sammy. Chicago obviously valued him enough to extend him to a lucrative deal the previous season, but he wasn't known as a reliable hitter. That's putting it kindly, considering journalists described him as a hitter who swung at anything with a sloppy plate approach that led to easy outs. Damn. By the end of May, the home run chase started to take shape, and Sammy was barely in the picture. He showed flashes of power, but it would take a shit ton of long balls for him to catch up to McGwire's double-digit lead. Quantifying the exact amount that equals a shit ton varies by person, but setting the record for most home runs in a month certainly met the quota. Sammy's spectacular month catapulted him into the national spotlight, expanding the home run chase to a three-man race. Slammin' Sammy attributed his sudden surge to finally finding peace within the stresses that came with the game. Working with new hitting coach Jeff Pentland, Sammy also benefited heavily by making severe changes to his swing mechanics. While McGwire shied away from all the attention the chase brought, Sammy thrived in the spotlight. He crushed balls and bounced out of the batter's box as if he was setting up to do a salsa move. He played to the crowd, giving curtain calls after home runs, even during road games. Unlike McGwire, who spoke fearfully out of respect for baseball's past, Sosa talked freely about the record. Growing up as a shoeshine boy in the Dominican Republic, Sosa worried about providing for his family. He didn't have time to idolize baseball stars. He'd been through the trenches and thought there were more serious issues going on in the world than a home run chase, so why not revel in the moment? Which is exactly what he kept doing. As Sammy kept slapping balls, Griffey ran out of gas, and the chase became the McGwire and Sosa show. It's like they tunneled each other with deep bombs. By mid-August, Sammy did the unthinkable and caught McGwire. He went from the darkest of horses to journalists believing he would be crowned the new single-season home run king. Although Sammy didn't see it that way. He treated McGwire respectfully and believed he would be the first to cross 61. McGwire viewed Sosa in the same light. He didn't see the chase as a competition between the two and only focused on what he could do at the plate. As they entered the final stretch of the season tied at 55, it was clear there would be a new leader by the season's end. No matter their nonchalant attitude of, oh, you broke the record first, someone had to do it. And with this booming St. Louis crowd cheering him on, looks like Big Mac will be the one. You can feel the energy through the screen, but this moment goes far beyond St. Louis. More than anything, MLB desperately needed this. For a sport that prides itself on being America's pastime, MLB hasn't had this many eyes on it in quite some time. A few years ago, players went on strike and shut down everything entirely. In the seasons that followed, the league struggled to keep fans interested. To get butts back in seats, it took a couple of beefy boys hitting moonshots as they pursued history. But it just wasn't inside stadiums. The hype of the chase was inescapable. Nike capitalized on the moment and ran ads with the tagline, "Chicks dig the long ball." The commercials featured jealous Cy Young Award-winning pitchers Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine attempting to strengthen their hitting skills because Mark got all the attention from the ladies.
Hi, Tom.
Chicks dig the long ball.
Sluggers got all the love. Nothing could slow down people's hunger for homers. Although, there were some hiccups. In mid-August, A reporter from the Associated Press published a piece about McGwire's use of androstenedione after spotting the supplement in his locker. The testosterone-producing pill had been banned in other sports, but was clean to use in MLB. It's why McGwire kept the pills in plain sight and forcefully defended himself, saying he's only doing what every other player in the league does. Well, maybe not everyone. But instead of condemning Mark, most media members took their anger out on the reporter. How could that asshole try to label Mark as a cheater when he's done nothing but provide good, clean entertainment for the whole nation? Big Mac should have stuffed that nerd in his locker right then and there when he questioned him. Baseball was so back, damn it, and no dude who scribbled on paper could kill that. Whew, I apologize. I blacked out there for a second. It reached a point where major networks found themselves scrambling to air games so the nation could keep track. As he approached Maris, McGwire even relaxed, knowing he had a duty to fulfill for everyone taking notice. The chase swallowed the league whole and turned any other major story into a footnote. Several of the MLB's top players changed teams. The Yankees looked poised to set a record of their own. Pushing 40, Ricky Henderson swiped bags like a youngin', but none of it mattered. Home runs were all the country cared about. When they went into September tied, Mark took off from Sammy, but thanks to the serendipitous scheduling of MLB, one of the two could break the record while the other watched. As Big Mac stood one home run behind tying Maris, the Cardinals were set to face off against the Cubs in the 2-game series. In anticipation, the league went all out and had the home run heroes ride golf carts together to joint press conferences where they played off one another like some weird buddy cop comedy. It was odd to see division rivals so chummy, but the promotion clearly worked. In the first of the 2 games, besides the sold-out crowd at Busch Stadium, ESPN drew its most viewers for a baseball game in the network's history. During the game, McGwire made his own history, putting himself in the record books next to Maris. In this game tonight, though, McGwire can stand alone. Sitting 3 homers behind Mark, Sammy needs to have a hell of a game tonight to make things interesting. But even then, Big Mac just needs 1. The pressure is on him. McGwire got his chance in the bottom of the first inning, but grounded out. Sosa's having a decent game, but a single and grounding out in the third don't help his chances. The Cardinals went 3 up and 3 down in the bottom of the third, and with McGwire slotted to come back up the next inning, that brings us here. With 1 swing, Big Mac could dethrone Maris. He didn't set out to make history, but he grew to understand the magnitude of what he could achieve and what it meant for the sport. Not a single soul predicted Sosa would be in the mix, but he shined when the lights were bright and helped capture the nation's attention alongside McGwire. The lead up here was almost tainted with silly accusations, but we can't control the past or future, so let's focus on the present. Welcome to a moment in history.
Down the left field line, is it enough? Gone! There it is! 62! Touch first, Mark. You are the new single-season home run king.
McGwire and Sosa were appointment viewing by the end of that season. Those homers were predictable. They were regular events. But it's not always like that. Sometimes a guy who doesn't usually hit homers just happens to pick up a bat at a moment that, narratively speaking, seems almost too good to be true.
It's July 31st, 2015. We're in Queens, where a game between the New York Mets and Washington Nationals remains tied in the bottom of the 12th inning. Nobody on, nobody out, Mets up looking for a walk-off. This is an important moment for the usual reasons: division rivalry and jockeying for first place. But it has a chance to be truly special on a totally different level because of this man at the plate. To understand why, we must rewind. This episode of Rewinder is presented by T-Mobile, America's largest 5G network. While it's not the main reason this Citi Field crowd is tingling right now, the race for the NL East depends on moments like this one. the Washington Nationals have won this division 2 of the last 3 seasons. And here they sit in first place today. The Mets hang just a couple games behind Washington, and tonight begins a 3-game series wherein New York could close that gap. Whether that matches your expectations or not depends on when you formed those expectations. Before this season, expectations were tepid, but that changed. Tommy John surgery took Zach Wheeler out of commission, but gave back another pitcher, Matt Harvey, after he missed all of 2014. Plop a rehabilitated Harvey beside these guys, and you're looking at several viable aces, young and old. Jacob deGrom is just breaking out as a star, while Bartolo Colon is literally still a star in his 40s. That staff, with closer Jeurys Familia sealing the deal, pitched the Mets into first place in April, including some big opening series victories in Washington, where Colon outdueled Max Scherzer, and Harvey got a win against Steven Strasburg. These Mets won 11 straight at one point and became the surprising talk of the majors. Even when those pitchers flagged somewhat, Noah Syndergaard and Steven Matz came up from the minors looking quite promising. The arms warrant faith. When the Mets fell back toward the mediocrity people expected, it was because of the offense. A lineup that's always been pocked with question marks only got flimsier. New York already needed production from some unproven bats, and then injuries made it worse. The Mets slumped, and when pressed to fix that offense, GM Sandy Alderson called the media citizens of Panic City, which some people did not like. That was late June, and one had to wonder if New York was just packing it in and giving up on the season. Only recently did the Mets front office make it very clear that would not be the case. On July 24th, they went out and got some helpful bats, Kelly Johnson and Juan Uribe. A couple days ago, the Mets got some pitching help by trading for Tyler Clippard. And today was the big one. Before this game, the Mets went out and made a deal for star outfielder Yoenis Cespedes. He'll arrive to help fight the Nats tomorrow. So the Mets are going for it. They're not giving up. They've made moves. They're still trying to win the NL East. That's the big picture. And that's what's at stake in this moment against the division leader. But it's not what people are feeling right now. The emotion palpable in this stadium is something more intimate. It's all about the move the Mets didn't make. The man at the plate right now with a chance to start or even finish a Mets rally is Wilmer Flores. Right now, his presence and his opportunity feel bigger than the big picture. Wilmer wasn't supposed to be here. He has been here a while, in the Mets system, that is. Wilmer was born in Venezuela, and at this point I feel like I have to tell you, he has 2 brothers who are also named Wilmer. Anyway, our Wilmer signed with the Mets organization on the day he turned 16. Their scouts had never seen a kid that skinny hit that hard. Opponents in the minor leagues found the same thing. Wilmer couldn't see an R-rated movie without a guardian, but he was raking. This 2009 New York Times piece tells of a team intentionally walking Flores with runners on first and second. Those stories and some impressive stats amounted to a high and sometimes even tip-top ranking among the most touted Mets prospects when Flores was still a teenager. Flores logged a lot of reps in the minors, long enough for his ranking to lag a bit and then pick right back up. Finally, on the day he turned 22, Flores debuted for the big league Mets and stuck around to spell the injured David Wright at third base. It went, The bat didn't pop, the glove didn't perform at basically any position Flores tried. Last season, Flores got a surprise early season fill-in start, and then got more opportunities later in the year when the Mets were totally out of contention. He looked better overall, better enough that at the beginning of this important 2015 campaign, Wilmer was named the opening day shortstop, even with doubts lingering about his defense. It's been a long, long road, but Wilmer Flores finally got to be an everyday Met this season, and he demonstrated enough of that power potential that some offered his ascent as a reason the Mets hadn't made a big trade entering June. Obviously, that last thing changed this month. The Mets pushed in their chips, and Flores, it turned out, was a chip. To improve their chances, and I guess satisfy those residents of Panic City, the Mets pursued the biggest bats on the trade block. They quickly zeroed in on Carlos Gomez, the aging but still powerful star languishing on the awful Milwaukee Brewers. Milwaukee was going nowhere and prepared to deal Gomez for younger players, but they wouldn't accept only the injured Zach Wheeler in return. They wanted Flores. And on the evening of July 29th, the Mets said, fine, he's yours. Just one thing. On the evening of July 29th, 2 nights ago, the Mets were right here in the middle of a game against the Padres. Wilmer was playing shortstop. Neither he nor Mets manager Terry Collins had been alerted to the trade talks, nor the deal being verbally finalized mid-game. Someone else spilled the beans, though. At 8:57 p.m., Joel Sherman of the Post reported that the Mets got Gomez. A few minutes later, the whole internet knew Flores was in that deal. And then, a few minutes after that, in the 7th inning, Flores stepped to the plate. Every fan in attendance who was checking Twitter between innings, which is to say, absolutely everyone, knew Flores was a goner, but Wilmer himself had no idea, and he was flabbergasted when he got a standing ovation. Only when Wilmer returned to the dugout did he realize why that happened. But still, as far as Terry Collins knew, nothing was official, so Flores went back out on the field to play shortstop, and that's when the dam burst. These were the tears of a guy, still only 23, who had been part of the same organization since he was a child, living far away from his home, working year after year toward this very opportunity. In an instant, without warning, he had to move halfway across the country and start fresh, on an awful team, no less. So many athletes in so many sports have experienced this moment before. Trades are cruel like that. Very few, though, have had their emotional response witnessed and documented in the middle of a game. Finally, the Mets front office called the dugout and told Collins to pull Flores in the 9th inning. Milwaukee execs wondered what the player they had just acquired was still doing out there to begin with. Except the deal wasn't done, not technically. While going over Carlos Gomez's medicals, the Mets doctors saw something that spooked them. Gomez has had some leg injuries this year, but insisted yesterday that he's fine. Sexy, in fact. Didn't matter. The Mets scrapped the entire deal, and at game's end, Flores, along with the rest of the world, found out he was in fact not getting traded for Carlos Gomez. Of course, that didn't mean he would remain a Met for good. Yesterday, Flores and his manager recalled that surreal scene on the field. Flores explained his emotions quite simply. Collins defended his decision to leave Flores out there at greater length, insisting he had no idea there was a trade, and placing some blame on everyone's cell phones. But the trade deadline wasn't until 4 p.m. on July 31st. That is today. Just a few hours ago, the Mets went out and made that other big deal for Cespedes. And it didn't include Flores. Wilmer Flores is, after clearly believing he wouldn't be and showing the whole world how he felt about that, a New York Met. And now he's up for them in a really big moment. It would be so sweet if he could deliver right here. But make no mistake, Wilmer does not need a walk-off tonight to become a fan favorite. He is already there. It's not like Wilmer Flores wanted to weep openly in front of thousands of people, but if anything could endear someone to the long-suffering fans of a downtrodden team, it was that outpouring of emotion that took place here 2 days ago. Tonight was the fans' chance to return that emotion, and Wilmer has given them ample opportunity to express themselves. Almost instantly, in fact. Flores is covering second base tonight, and the third pitch of the game produced this hard-hit ball that required this sick diving play for an out at first. It's a great play, but you don't usually hear this kind of crowd pop for infield defense.
That's a fine play.
Nor do people usually give standing ovations in the top of the first inning. But that is how completely Wilmer Flores has won the hearts of Mets fans. For simply making his first plate appearance, Wilmer got another standing ovation. This was beautiful. Later on, Wilmer came up with runners on first and second, and he drove one in with a grounder just out of reach. This place went nuts.
Here comes Uribe with the first run of the game.
So tonight has already been magical for Wilmer Flores and his adoring fans. The Mets would love a walk-off here. They're all in on this season, as evidenced by the moves they made this month and this very afternoon. Some wins off the first-place Nats would represent huge strides in their quest to win the NL East and maybe beyond. On paper, that's what's at stake here, and it doesn't have to be Wilmer. And on paper, it won't be. The announcers just noted, sort of tongue-in-cheek, that he's gone a while without a homer.
All you got to do, Wilmer, is hit it out of the park. It's only been 146 at-bats since his last home run. He's due.
And that is fine. The Mets just need someone, anyone, to pull them ahead at some point. Wilmer just needs to get on base to do his job. He doesn't have to be the one to end the whole thing right here. But man, if it is Wilmer, if this young man who has been part of this organization since basically childhood, who has ascended and struggled and grappled with the pain of leaving in front of the only fan base he's ever known as a pro, if he could make it happen, then an already magical night might become something historic. Let's see. Welcome to a moment in history.
Torres drives it. Deep left center field. Taylor back near the wall. It's out of here! Flores ends it with a home run! Wilmer Flores night at Citi Field comes to a fitting close, and the Mets win it 2-1 in 12.
Okay, I said that was an example of a home run that seemed too good to be true, but at least Wilmer Flores is a position player. Bartolo Colon, that's another story.
It's May 7th, 2016. We're in San Diego, where the visiting New York Mets lead the Padres 2-0 in the top of the second inning. New York's got a man on second, but they've also got 2 outs and Bartolo Colon at the plate. I can basically guarantee you that nothing will come of this, that this inning will end very shortly. To explain, we'll need to rewind. All it would take is a base hit to score this runner, but no reasonable person would bet on that happening. Let's start with the broadest reason why. This man, Bartolo Colon, is a pitcher. Pitchers focus on defense. They work their asses off to hone one very specific skill set and to maintain the health and effectiveness of their pitching arms. The amount of work it takes to be even a replacement level major league batter just doesn't mesh with a pitcher's lifestyle. This wasn't always the case. The Society for American Baseball Research has a terrific review of pitchers hitting and notes that in the early days of baseball, much less was expected of the player on the mound. That changed. Thanks to the evolution of rules and technique, the guy who just kind of lobbed the ball underhand to let the batter start the play turned into a hard-throwing, batter-deceiving, dynamic weapon. Increased focus on pitching, decreased focus on batting. Pitchers became, on average, pretty bad at putting the ball in play. The pitchers remembered as great hitters tend to be guys like Babe Ruth, who mostly transitioned out of pitching during his best slugging years, or guys like Bob Gibson, who boasts just a couple genuinely strong hitting seasons. If a pitcher can stay above the Mendoza line, a batting average of at least 200, then people are impressed. In light of that trend, the major leagues tried repeatedly to ease pitchers' hitting burden, designating an extra hitter with a 10-man rule, or perhaps giving managers the option to skip the pitcher in the batting order. After years of dithering and experimentation, the day finally came to let pitchers focus on defense and replace them in the order with an offense-only player. The designated hitter was adopted in the 1970s by the American League. Enough National League executives felt pitchers should hit or were on a fishing trip that the rule didn't pass on that side of baseball. To this day, all games in AL parks let pitchers rest while their teams play offense, while pitchers in NL parks must pick up a bat. It's one of the oddest things about baseball, and I kind of like it. So, what about this pitcher? As far as his actual job goes, Bartolo Colon is a legend. Colon grew up in the rural Dominican Republic, where they say field work on the family farm built up the strength that made him such a powerful, durable pitching prospect. The fastballer graduated from the minors to the majors with Cleveland, graduated from regular starter to all-star at age 25, and soon became Cleveland's ace, with some lights-out playoff performances to his name. In 2002, Cleveland fell on hard times and decided to rebuild, trading their star pitcher for prospects, good ones. Colon eventually landed with the Angels, where he played the best season of his career. The 2005 Cy Young Award eased the pain of a postseason cut short by injury. The year he turned 35, Colon left the Angels and began another itinerant stretch, one that seemed like his career twilight, especially when he missed the entire 2010 season with injuries. But after some interesting sounding surgery, a suspension for PEDs, and blah 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 blah, Bartolo resurfaced as a goddamn force at age 40 with the Oakland A's. A control pitcher, a shutout artist, a big lovable character, and a 2013 All-Star. So that is a terrific pitching career, and I'd like to pause right there to review where it all happened. With the exception of that half a season in Montreal, Monsieur Yuppie, Bartolo Colon spent the entirety of 16 Major League seasons in the American League, meaning he almost always played with a designated hitter. Colon entered the 2013 offseason with just 104 plate appearances in 16 years. In those opportunities, Bart gave his teams 10 singles, 0 extra base hits, 0 walks, and 56 strikeouts. Even for a pitcher, Bartolo Colon hadn't gotten the hang of hitting, and why should he bother? The dude made it to age 40 hardly having to touch a bat. He barely even learned to bunt. But here we are, in the National League. 3 years ago, Colon signed on to become the Mets' improbable 41-year-old ace. He stayed healthy and pitched a solid season, too. For the first time in his career, Colon had to swing a bat several times a week for a full season. By all accounts, Colon took the new responsibility seriously. Even dating back to his Expo days, Colon seized opportunities to practice, and he put in time with the Mets hitting coach. In June 2014, Colon recorded his first hit in almost a decade. This rip into left actually gave him enough time to chug into his first ever extra base. Bartolo ended up scoring to ignite a Mets rally. Colon's next hit came just a week later during his very next start. Our guy had a streak going, and that was it for the season. Bartolo finished his first full National League campaign with 2 hits, no walks, 33 strikeouts, and a batting average of .032. 2 years later, Colon's all-or-nothing approach at the plate has become kind of a running joke. It's a bit like rock, paper, scissors, like he makes up his mind before the ball is even thrown. This produces some funny takes, like the first 2 pitches in this quintessential at-bat from a couple weeks ago. Brandon Finnegan throws something perfectly hittable, but Big Sexy was never going to swing. Strike 1. Another one. No, strike 2. And the only thing better than Bartolo taking is Bartolo swinging, which he does blindly and with full force no matter the location. Strike 3. I definitely prefer the all approach to the nothing approach, especially when Colon swings so hard his helmet falls off, which he has done quite a bit. It's such a regular occurrence that just last week, Bartolo had the foresight to catch this one before it hit the ground. All told, Bartolo's stoic takes and wild cuts brought him into this plate appearance with a career batting average of .089. And so far in this at-bat, he's given us 2 shots of nothing. On the mound is James Shields, who was a big, flashy signing for the Padres last season. A strong pitcher, albeit last year's Major League leader in home runs surrendered. Shields' first pitch was just a bit high. Bartolo didn't flinch. Ball 1. Then Shields found his spot over the plate. Bartolo didn't flinch. Strike 1. That puts us here. And based on everything we just heard, we know something for sure. Bartolo Colon is not going to succeed. This is a 42-year-old. A 42-year-old pitcher who spent over a decade avoiding the batter's box because he occupied the other side of the AL-NL split. A 42-year-old pitcher who's found new life in the NL, but even with practice, has produced more laughs than hits at the plate. You might say, hey, if Colon takes one of those huge swings, maybe he could do something here. Maybe even his first career homer. Crazier things have happened. But no, crazier things really haven't happened. The oldest player ever to hit his first career home run was a pitcher, Randy Johnson, in 2003. But Randy was several years younger than Bartolo is now, and he finished his career batting 125. Much better than our protagonist. Try as he might, Bartolo Colon's odds of doing anything here are microscopic. But let's watch it play out. Welcome to A Moment in History.
Looking for his first hit of the year.
He drives one, deep left field. That goes Upton, back near the wall. It's out of here! Bartolo has done it! The impossible has happened!
So there you have an example of a kind of silly novelty homer, but Bartolo Colon was also on the mound for a much more poignant moment.
It's September 26th, 2016. We're at Marlins Park in Miami, Florida, with Bartolo Colon pitching for the Mets in the bottom of the first. With no runs on the board, the Marlins leadoff hitter D. Gordon waits for the 2-0 pitch. Look, I know, on paper, the stakes are low. There's no championship up for grabs, we're only 3 outs into the game. But this next pitch will become part of a moment so much more impactful than even a World Series would be for Miami. To appreciate something that's bigger than just one game or sports in general, we need to rewind. Gordon is about to have one of the most memorable at-bats of his career. But it's coming during a season that he'd probably rather look past. Not because of anything he did or didn't do on the field, more so because of the fact that he couldn't be on the field for much of 2016. In April, he received an 80-game suspension, which was a big blow to a Marlins team that managed just 71 wins a year before, with Gordon playing in 145 games. And by playing, I mean he dominated. It took him just 28 games to record his 50th hit, and by season's end, he led the National League in hits, batting average, and stolen bases, which all paired nicely with his first Gold Glove award. Doing so in his first season in Miami, he was part of a core making the Marlins fun, or at least watchable again. What Gordon lacked in power, he more than made up for in speed, which he showed off on June 30th, 2015 against the Giants when he legged out an inside-the-park home run. This was his first homer of the season, and one of just 8 that he would have in his 5-year career entering 2016. He didn't add to that total in the first 21 games of the season before getting suspended, nor has he in the 53 since his return. And while his numbers have slipped from the year before, considering he was otherworldly in 2015, Gordon's doing just fine. He showed very little rust from the 80 games off. The trouble is, with or without Gordon, the Marlins are all but mathematically eliminated from the postseason for the 13th straight season. It'll even be a struggle to finish 500, and considering who they're facing tonight, it will be just a bit tougher. Partially because Colon is famously big and even more famously sexy, which can cause a distraction, but also he's a good pitcher. And with the start tonight, he and the Mets have a bit more to play for as they look to lock up a wildcard spot for their first postseason appearance since last year. If they can, it'll be New York's first back-to-back playoffs since the 99 and 2000 seasons, which was all the way back when Colon was a sweet, starry-eyed 27-year-old. That was 7 teams, 1 50-game suspension for PEDs, and just a couple LBs ago for the pitcher. Much like Gordon, Colon came out of his 2012 suspension looking fresh. He finished the year with the second most wins in the AL and led the league in complete game shutouts. That earned him a nice contract from the Mets, which Colon repaid by recording his most strikeouts since his Cy Young winning 2005 season. And before tonight, in 2016, he had been pretty solid, especially over his last 10 games when the Mets needed it the most. And they needed it tonight. They're facing a Marlins team that's playing for so much more than whatever fleeting postseason hopes exist. And regardless of which side is pitching, Miami would have a presence on the mound. That number 16 wasn't going anywhere, especially not from the hearts and minds of Marlins players, coaches, or fans. Miami's star, the young ace Jose Fernandez, was found dead less than 2 days earlier after a boat he was in crashed into a jetty. This devastated his teammates, their entire city, and the league as a whole. No one wanted to believe his story would end like this. He arrived in the US as a 15-year-old after his 4th attempt to defect from Cuba. On the journey over, he dove into the water to save a woman who had fallen in, which turned out to be his mother. After settling in Tampa, he won a pair of high school state titles and drew the eyes of Marlins management, who selected him 14th overall in the 2011 draft. He struck out 8 over 5 innings in his debut on April 7, 2013 against the Mets, and while a New York comeback in the 9th spoiled his result, he'd go on to earn NL Rookie of the Year honors and finish 3rd in Cy Young voting. In addition to that, in his final game of the season, he crushed a ball that went out for his first career home run against Atlanta.
The kid in his last game homers to left. We told you to come out.
And it also led to the bench's clearing once he made it home after Atlanta disapproved of him spitting his way around third and taking a little too long to look at the ball. When it came to his pitching, some argued it was the greatest season by a rookie in MLB history. So, to no one's surprise, Fernandez got the nod to be the Marlins' opening day starter in his 2nd season, making him the youngest to do that in the NL since Dwight Gooden in 1986. And although his season came to an end in May, he returned halfway through 2015 looking like the ace the Marlins needed. That carried into this season for Fernandez, which included an unbeaten May, part of 8 straight starts that ended with him earning the win. In his final outing against the division-leading Nationals, he struck out 12 across 8 scoreless innings, and afterward told a teammate that he felt it was the best game he'd ever pitched. But when he passed away, it wasn't tragic because he was a great pitcher. It devastated the communities because he was loved as a person. Tonight at Marlins Park, you could see that in the stands and around the stadium with memorials popping up as they had throughout all of Miami. And you could also see it on every Marlins player, physically in the fact that they all wore his jersey in tribute, but also in the emotions openly on display for the last 36 hours. The Marlins canceled their game on the day of Fernandez's death, and many took the time to open up about the 24-year-old. The theme of their memories was the joy he brought to and took from baseball. Marlins manager Don Mattingly likened him to how kids play the game, having never lost that early passion. Eduardo Perez said that all Fernandez wanted to do was have fun and be on that mound and play the game. Not work the game, but play the game, and he played it beautifully. Marlins president David Sampson, backed by the entire team, spoke at length about Jose and referenced the fact that they would make sure no one forgot the man that Fernandez was.
His story is representative of a story of hope and of love and of faith, and no one will ever let that story die.
Those who had grown up with him over the last few years expressed their love, their hurt, and how much they'd miss Fernandez's daily positivity. Gordon posted on his Instagram a sentiment shared by many teammates. They were family, and they'd lost a brother. Ahead of the opening pitch tonight, they surrounded the mound with number 16 for a moment of silence in the national anthem, as Marlins players fought through tears. The Mets crossed the infield and both teams embraced following the anthem, showing the impact felt by the entire league. Miami took to the mound as a team and left messages in the dirt for their pitcher, before taking their places as their first game without Jose began. But the tribute was far from over, and even the first pitch of this at-bat had purpose. D. Gordon has batted lefty his entire career, so where he's currently at, it makes sense. But when he came to the plate, he stepped into the opposite batter's box. Settling in as a righty, just like Jose, Gordon actually mimicked Fernandez's batting stance to a T, knee wiggle and all. After taking ball 1, he swapped out equipment.
And I would guess that was Jose's helmet.
And returned to his natural side where he took ball 2. With less than 2 days separating this pitch from Fernandez's death, every emotion has filtered through these players, this organization, and their fans. In and outside the stadium located in Little Havana, memorials grow, honoring the man who loved baseball but openly loved life even more. And while the healing process needed more time, for today at least, they were back to just playing baseball. But Gordon, who has never been mistaken for a power hitter, has one more salute for his brother. Welcome to a moment in history.
Gordon to right, it's deep, and it's gone! D. Gordon has hit it out, and the Marlins have a 1-0 lead.
And let's finish this one off at a particularly cool venue, which became rife with dingers when MLB paid it a visit, none more significant than the last one.
It's August 12th, 2021. Up close, this looks like a tense but ordinary baseball situation. Yankees up 1 run, White Sox at bat in the bottom of the 9th. 1 on, 1 out. Big moment. Only when you zoom out do you realize that big moment is taking place in the middle of a cornfield. Before we see if the White Sox can pull off some heroics, we need to understand what's going on here. We need to rewind. This episode of Rewinder is presented by T-Mobile, America's largest 5G network. So we should start with the corn, yeah? We're not used to seeing teams from New York and Chicago play amid rows of corn. Well, tonight we're in Dyersville, Iowa. To understand why, you've got to go back to this guy. Yeah. W.P. Kinsella was a Canadian fella who loved to write about baseball. I didn't actually mean to rhyme that. In 1982, he released his most famous book, Shoeless Joe. A farmer hears voices, builds a baseball diamond in his cornfield, then meets the ghosts of Shoeless Joe Jackson and the infamous 1919 Black Sox. Oh, and also the author J.D. Salinger. A few years later, it was adapted into a movie, Field of Dreams, starring Kevin Costner. The movie's got almost everything in common with the book, minus Salinger. You don't mess with J.D., apparently. To be honest, I hadn't seen the movie until recently, and it's a nice movie. Okay, but you're probably still asking why any of this matters. Well, one thing Field of Dreams does better than perhaps any other work of fiction is depict baseball as something pure and romantic and even holy, something you long for when it's gone. That's why the Black Sox play a part in the story. In real life, the 1919 Chicago White Sox were accused of throwing the World Series at the behest of big-time gamblers. 8 players were banned from baseball forever, among them Shoeless Joe Jackson. In the story, their ghosts spend eternity pining for the game that banned them. And our guy Kev misses his late father. It's all about baseball as a symbol of bygone youth, innocence, and opportunity. Which is sort of darkly ironic given the events of the last 2 years. In August of 2019, 100 years after the Black Sox scandal and 30 years after the movie came out, MLB announced a plan. They had done some one-off neutral site games before, but this one would be even wilder. An official, regular season Field of Dreams game. 1 year in the future, August of 2020, the Yankees and White Sox would play in a custom-built ballpark right next to the still intact film set in a cornfield in Dyersville, Iowa. It would be quaint and old-timey and classic. It would be the state's first ever MLB game. It would not happen. The White Sox of yestercentury could have told you the real world has a way of interrupting baseball. Shoeless Joe himself missed the 1918 season to serve in World War I. And the infamous influenza epidemic took a real toll on baseball. The 1918 World Series was basically a super spreader event, and a famous umpire died of the flu later that year. Well, 100 years later, here we were again. The 2020 MLB season only kinda happened, but Dyersville remained on the schedule until the last minute. The venue was prepared, the matchup was switched to Yankees-Cardinals to fit the modified schedule. MLB really tried, but days before the game was supposed to be played, they pulled the plug. A year later, this game is finally being played as originally conceived. Although I should mention, we're still feeling the effects of the pandemic. A few weeks ago, the Yankees acquired Anthony Rizzo, recent hero of the 2016 World Series champion Chicago Cubs, beloved by many of these Iowans. But Rizzo is not playing first base right now. He tested positive for COVID a few days ago. The virus remains a major obstacle in our lives. And it's not the only force affecting this event. You see all this corn standing tall in the outfield? It's the most distinctive feature connecting this venue to the field in the movie, but it almost got ruined. Two brothers, Andy and Adam Ray, farm this land when it's not hosting a baseball game. Remember, this right here isn't the Field of Dreams set. That's over there. The place we're playing right now was custom built just for this game. It was all corn until recently. The brothers helped immensely with making that happen, preparing, cutting, and moving their crops to make room. Then they replanted to make the outfield look as lush and impressive as it did in the movie. It all looked great until 2 days ago, when a big-ass storm rolled through eastern Iowa. Severe winds knocked over something like 1,000 outfield corn stalks. To achieve the proper cornfield effect in time, the brothers had to work around the clock, zip tying 1,000-odd fence posts to the stalks. A truly amazing achievement to pull off that fast. And hey, it looks great. You wouldn't even know. It's been worth it too, because the corn is such an important feature tonight. The Yankees and White Sox followed Kevin Costner onto the field for intros, appearing seemingly out of thin corn, just like Shoeless Joe and the gang did in the movie. Aside from the fact that it implies all of these people are dead, it was a really cool visual. And the outfield corn's gotten plenty of in-game play. This game has featured 7 home runs so far, including 2 from Yankees star Aaron Judge, who drove in most of New York's runs tonight. One was this opposite field bomb to pull the Yankees ahead in the 3rd inning, gone into the stalks. Then, when the Yankees fell behind again, Judge ignited a late rally with this jack to center corn. Easily the most exciting play of the night came right after that. Moments after Judge's second homer closed the gap to 7-6, Giancarlo Stanton had one last chance. 9th inning, 2 outs to save the game, and boom. That thing was smoked. If you search behind the left field fence, you might find some popcorn. So, that is why we're playing a bottom of the 9th. The White Sox had this game wrapped up until the Yankees' massive slugging lads flipped the script. This guy has a chance to flip it back. With a man on, one big swing for the Sox would end this game on a walk-off. Nobody better for the task. This is Tim Anderson. Anderson was a 2-sport athlete who shifted his focus from basketball to baseball, but only played at the JUCO level and went undrafted in 2012. Only after a ridiculous breakout sophomore season did Anderson get attention. Beginning in 2013, he worked his way up the White Sox farm system, then debuted for the big league club 5 years ago. Since then, Anderson has worked his way up to regular shortstop, dynamic leadoff hitter, silver slugger, and this season, all-star. Anderson is super talented and a big reason the Sox have a shot to win the AL Central for the first time in over a decade. There's more to Tim Anderson's role in this game and moment, though. Field of Dreams conjures nostalgia by conjuring the literal ghosts of a time when baseball was perhaps more simple, more pure, more... Hey, has anyone noticed that all the players depicted in this movie are white? Yeah, when we exalt these classic old-timey elements of baseball history, the old architecture, the old jerseys, we are referencing a time when baseball was segregated. And then there's today. More than 70 years since Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, baseball hasn't fully integrated black players. Decades ago, MLB was nearly 1/5 African American. Today, it has regressed to well below that number and below most other major American sports leagues. There's just no arguing with the fact that MLB has fallen short in outreach, scouting, and community investment. That lack of black representation has felt particularly stark over the last year or two, when tragedies like the police killing of George Floyd stirred the U.S. into protests, and MLB didn't really know how to respond. So much of that burden fell on the shoulders of the league's few prominent black players. On opening day last year, Anderson felt obligated to join in peaceful protest by kneeling during the national anthem. It takes courage to speak out in a league with so few black players, but Anderson's not afraid of the spotlight, even when it's controversial. That's true when he's playing, also. During Anderson's rise to stardom, he's drawn some ire for his expressiveness on the field. Showboating, celebrating, generally enjoying himself in a sport that's still pretty stodgy compared to others. Anderson insists on having fun, controversy be damned. He performs for very important reasons. Fair or not, Tim feels pressure to help make baseball more accessible to people like him. It can be a lonely campaign at times. Anderson's outspokenness and his exuberance re-entered the conversation before this season, when Chicago hired Tony La Russa, a manager known for being successful and, well, also kind of a mascot for that stodginess in baseball. La Russa was on the record disparaging athletes who kneeled during the national anthem. La Russa was also on the record disparaging baseball players who committed sins as grave as swinging when their team had a big lead. Rarely does a baseball manager in 2021 feel compelled to inventory his skeletal racism levels in his introductory press conference, but such is Tony La Russa's reputation. Anderson came out quickly and clearly to say he would not change his style or his approach in deference to his new manager. And he's proven as much this season. When La Russa publicly criticized Yermin Mercedes for the grave injustice of continuing to play hard even when the White Sox were winning by a lot, Anderson came to his teammates' defense. And it wasn't the first time he had done so. Anderson favors brashness and personality and fun. Old-fashioned manners be damned. This isn't some major conflict in the clubhouse. They get along in spite of their disagreements, and, the Sox are having a great season so far. La Russa sadly couldn't participate tonight. He's attending a family funeral. In his absence, his team has risen to the occasion, joining in the home run barrage that, if not for that big Yankees rally in the top of this inning, would have already won them the game. Add all of the above together, and you're left with a truly unique scene. It was supposed to happen a year ago, but devastating world events intervened. This scene honors the nostalgia and romance of baseball history, as depicted in a beloved classic movie. But it also references a period of baseball history defined by prejudice, and it underscores a racial imbalance that hasn't really been fixed. Tim Anderson is accustomed to standing out and speaking out. He goes out of his way to do so. Right now, Anderson is wearing a uniform that no black players ever got to wear. He plays for an organization and a league still shamefully underpopulated with black employees. As much as this occasion honors baseball's past, Tim Anderson is here to push baseball into the future, as uphill a battle as that may be. For now, he could snatch the spotlight once more with a single big swing. Let's see if Tim Anderson can walk off the Field of Dreams game. Welcome to a moment in history.
Anderson hits it in the air to right, back at the wall, and the White Sox win it!
Thanks for watching that Rewinder marathon. If you want to see episodes of Rewinder before they come out, then do what these people do and subscribe to Secret Base on Patreon. If you want to stay on YouTube, then here's a couple more episodes.